Hello, welcome to the session Google Chat Apps Design Principles. In this session, we're going to take a closer look at some of the better practices of not just building Google Chat apps, but building them in a way that really resonates with your users, so they keep using your apps over and over again. Of course, a lot of this work starts up front before you code. So with that, let's jump in. Quick note, if you are already familiar with Google Chat apps, that's awesome. You're ready for this session. But if you're new or perhaps need a refresher, do check out the Chat Apps 101 session that accompanies this one as a prerequisite. It will get you up to speed on the ins and outs of building chat apps. Then you can come back here and learn more about design. Why is chat app design so important? And why do you really need to think about it when you build chat apps? The answer is simple. Only well-designed chat apps get called back. It's like any application you build. The user experience really determines the success of your chat app. If users find it useful and intuitive, easy and effective, and it makes practical sense for improving how they work, they're going to use it over and over again. But if your app misses that mark, if it's hard to figure out, if it's not fluid, it doesn't bring value to integrating or extending chat, it simply won't be as popular. Remember, it's not just about getting installs for your chat app, it's getting callback time and time again and becoming a critical part of a user's work journey. So let's talk about how you can delight users with your chat apps. We'll start off with planning, things to consider before you start coding out your chat app. Then we'll move on to onboarding. First impressions are huge in getting folks comfortable and excited about your chat app, and we'll talk about best practices for that. And then we'll round it out with some interaction highlights and close off with a design checklist and some additional resources to get you started. First up, planning your chat app. One of the very first steps in planning out your chat app is knowing who you're building it for. And obviously, knowing audiences isn't unique to building apps of any type, and it's definitely just as important with chat apps. However, if your chat app is targeted to a more technical audience, say developers, or scoped to a population of users you know will be familiar with chat or tools like it, even if it's publicly available, you can rely more on their familiarity with chat concepts and not have to focus on overstating your design. An internal audience is typically a lot easier. You often know their experience or comfort level with using chat apps, and whether yours will be a novel idea or something they're already comfortable with. Bottom line, though, is don't take for granted your users will just get it when it comes to your chat app. Make sure your chat app connects with the audiences you intend to reach and you design it accordingly. You need to think about things like, how do they work today? This is an important one. In many cases, your chat app may be changing something the user already does today. You may be trying to make a process more efficient or bring two apps closer together with an integration. Knowing these steps are important for everything from authentication to the number of steps a process currently takes to what needs to be integrated and, of course, what data sources are included, and so on. The big outcome or design goal here is how are you going to improve this overall process? Or, to be honest, even can you? Chat apps make great sense in so many use cases. So many things can be improved upon or sped up. So many apps can be tied together to work better together. But really understanding the user journey and coming up with a plan to improve on it is crucial. And as we said, a better design is key to getting them to use your app over and over. It's the same for user expectations. Anticipating the role of your app and how users will approach it will help you design it for the best possible outcomes. For example, an integration with another app. You are not trying to replace the other app, you're just trying to tie it closer with chat to save some time and steps and add some efficiencies. Don't overcomplicate your design or feature creep. Keep it focused and simple to the point. Chat apps that work as promised also tend to get called back over and over versus ones that don't. If you are building an internal, team-based app, language and geography may not be a concern. But if you're building a global app, you want to be mindful of both. For geography, you probably like to avoid sending alerts or notifications inappropriate times for a user's time zone. For example, an end-of-day reminder of outstanding tasks may not be helpful or even appreciated at 3 a.m. in the morning. You can get a user's time zone and working hours from the Calendar API, and then let your app handle tasks that you'd like at a much more friendly time. For language, if you're going for those global audiences, you may want to do something like capture the preferred language of a team when your app is added to a space or a group conversation, for example, and then update your UI or respond accordingly in the native language of the users. For an individual chat user, you can automatically check a user's preferred language using the Chat API, along with the Workspace Admin SDK and the Directory API. So this way, you can immediately localize your responses. With language, of course, you can also add in features like translation services and natural language processing to really upgrade your app's global design. One last consideration is access to actions and data. When you design your chat app, you want to make sure that you account for permissions and data access. This is easier in a direct messaging scenario where it's one user and your app, where you can authenticate the user and control the flow. But in a group conversation or space, you want to make sure that the information your app shares and the actions it offers are not made inappropriately to the wrong folks. Your design needs to plan for any access to sensitive content or actions and adjust accordingly, so only the people who should access get access and the rest stay safe. Once you know your audience, it's time to map your user journeys. And while it may be tempting to jump in and start coding your chat app immediately because it's easy and you can, it's really better to really thoroughly think out every interaction and create a user journey that will stand the test of your whole development process and ultimately really delight your users when you finally deliver it. For starters, think about storyboarding every interaction. And that's everything from your app being invoked to authentication, to executing commands, to getting more help, whatever you want it to do, all those interactions. Of course, chat apps are meant to be easy to use, but it typically takes a well thought out design to get the easy part right. One idea is to put together a storyboard where you can walk through every step and message and then litmus test it against, is this really as easy as possible and as clear as it can be? The tools you use to storyboard doesn't matter. Figma, for example, is a very popular one, but so is a whiteboard, sticky notes, Google Drawings, pen and paper, whatever you like, perfect. I also find that the Google Chat Card Builder tool, which we'll see in a couple slides, is really super helpful to lay out and plan UIs. It helps you visualize them quickly and you can test things out. Also, if you really need to see some UI context with the product for your designs, stubbing out some screens with the provided app script chat template is relatively fast and easy and doesn't require a full-blown app. You're going to want to keep it simple. While you're building out your user journeys, keep this in mind as the ultimate design goal. The last thing you want to do with your chat app is overwhelm your users with too many features, too many choices, too many options, too many things to learn, too many complicated steps. We have a tendency to think more is best. If I only offer them more features, they will like it. But that's not the case with chat apps. It's about getting the right results and responses quickly with the least amount of effort, including this important one, a limited learning curve. The more straightforward and succinct your design is, the better your chat app will be. Plan for less is best. That said, one thing you don't want to oversimplify is how your chat app responds to users if something goes wrong. You want to be able to quickly get them back on track without them feeling confused or lost or worse, like they want to give up. You want to offer them the guardrails for your chat app to be as close to foolproof as possible. When planning your user journeys, include really clear error messages with explanations and steps to remediate any challenges that may arrive, giving the user the knowledge and confidence they can get around it and back on track. An example could be around if an authentication flow doesn't successfully work. You won't want to respond with just a generic access denied if something goes wrong. You want to offer something that's more explanatory and actionable, like, it appears you've attempted to access resources you do not have permission to, or go here to request access to these resources, and once you have access, please try again. Whatever you can do to keep them moving forward will help a lot. And then finally, be prepared to iterate on your design. Run it by others, obviously such as real prospective users would be a great source. Folks who will use your chat apps may have a different perspective from you on what the user journey could or should look like and help you put it all together. No need to wait until launch to find out you made some missteps. Getting users started successfully in the first few moments with your chat app is super important. The saying, you only get one chance to make a first impression, really holds true with a chat app. If your chat app doesn't grab a user's attention and get them excited and confident in using it immediately, it may just be the last time you ever see them in it. And unfortunately, that does happen with some apps that simply do miss the mark. Let's talk about how you can offer a healthy onboarding experience for your chat apps. When your chat app is added to a space or a group conversation for the first time, or even if it's been removed prior and re-added, it will receive an added to space event from Google Chat that alerts your app of the interaction. This is your opportunity to make that first great impression for your chat app and respond with a one-time onboarding message that introduces your chat app to all the users of the space and lets them know what your chat app does and how they can use it. Here are some suggestions of best practices for creating an effective onboarding message. Now, the first one's kind of obvious, and that is to say hello. With chat being a conversational tool, and as you would expect if a human joined a conversation, offering a greeting or a pleasantry is a great way to kick off this introductory conversation. You could even take this a step further if you'd like. The Added to Space event will include some details about the space your app was added to and who the user was that added it to that space. You could follow up your hello with, "Thanks for adding me to whatever the space name is, space." And mention the user who added the app by name so other users can see who invited the app into your space. You could also use the user info to get the user's local language and perhaps respond in the language of their choice. That said, one thing you don't want to do is make this message too wordy or too chatty. You do want to make sure you say very succinct and clear to get folks comfortable with your app fast. The next thing you want to do is convey what your chat app does. Of course, as a developer, you know exactly really well what your app does, but users initially won't. And remember, just because you may have created a really descriptive listing in the Google Workspace Marketplace store for your app with images and link previews and all your app's commands defined, which, by the way, is the best practice for creating a solid listing, it still doesn't mean every user will have seen it. In fact, it's probably very likely that only the Workspace admin who added the app to the domain will have ever seen your app's listing. So even a great marketplace listing is not enough to warm all your users up. Another thing to remember is that if you are integrating with a well-known app, for example, Asana as we see here, users that are familiar with Asana may have expectations of what your app should do, and they may go looking for features you didn't implement. This is a great time to let them know exactly what your app does and keep them focused. And as we mentioned with hello and your introduction, you don't want to overdo it here as well. Don't blast a list of every single one of your features. Users tend to gloss over on long setup messages and probably won't recall everything anyway. Just stick to the essentials. And that also goes for telling folks how to get started and also where to go to get more help. Both of these are essential, and a solid help command is an absolute must. As you can see here, the Asana onboarding flow is a really good representation of many best practices. It starts off with a simple hello. Then it tells you what it does. It connects Asana and Google Chat so you can manage your tasks and projects right from chat. It's brief and it's to the point. Then it tells you how to get started. And this will be common for a lot of chat apps where, as it is in the case of Asana, is the first thing you're going to need to do is to configure the app, and they tell you the only command you need to know to get started with that. Then once you successfully connect, it still doesn't overload you with all the commands they offer. It just tells you about two commands. Its main command, that is, create a task, and then refers you to their help command for everything else. It's a nice, focused welcome that's both clear and manageable. Then on the right side here, you can see Asana's help message, which is another critical piece of onboarding. Here they use a card, which offers a really nice approach of adding in some key action buttons right inside the card. They also limit the commands at first not to overwhelm the user, but offer a show more button to reveal them all. It's a nice example of an onboarding flow. So as it is with onboarding, you can design the rest of your chat app to be user-friendly by focusing on each of your unique user interactions. There are a few key building blocks for your chat app design that you will really want to leverage, namely slash commands, cards, and dialogues. Now, of course, you can use things like at mentions, plain text, or even natural language processing with Dialogflow. But if you really want to guide users, really simplify how they use your chat app, these will be key to your design. So let's start off with slash commands. Slash commands are likely going to be the preferred way for how users interact with your chat app. They make it super easy to explore all your key features that your app offers, and then they make it super fast to access them going forward. Using slash commands is way easier than having folks type direct commands into chat. Less errors, less confusion, and it also lets them forgo having to mention your app in a space or group conversation each time, making it overall simpler. And while using them is easy as starting off with a slash in a chat message, some folks may not be aware of what they are or how to use them. And as such, sometimes they're equated as something for power users. Well, we happen to think that they're easy for everybody. But that said, do make sure you have a plan for a way to run some of your key functions without relying on slash commands. One common pattern is to simply respond to your app's help message if someone mentions your app and then appends help to the end. You could also just, anytime your app is app mentioned with nothing attached to it, just respond with some instructions. Super helpful. When you're ready to sit down and design the slash commands you want to implement, we suggest not overloading every feature and then some that your app offers with its very own slash command. Even though they're easy to use, you can bog down your user's experience by inundating your app with too many. Focus on your key core features, and then think about using things like cards and dialogues to serve some less prominent functionality. So let's start off with slash commands. Slash commands are likely going to be the preferred way for how your users interact with your chat app. They make it super easy to explore all your key features that your chat app offers, and then they make it super fast to access them going forward. Using slash commands is way easier than having folks type direct commands into chat. Less errors, less confusion, and it also lets them forgo having to mention your app every time in a space or a group conversation, making it way overall simpler. And while using them is as easy as starting off with a slash in a chat message, some folks may not be aware of what they are or how to use them. And as such, sometimes they're equated to something for power users. We happen to think that they're really easy for everybody. But that said, do make sure you have a plan for a way to run some of your key features without relying on slash commands. One common pattern is simply to respond to your app's help message. If someone mentions your app and then appends help to the end of it with a response from your help message. Another way, simply anytime someone mentions your app with nothing attached to it, you may respond with some help or tell them how to use commands. And again, you can also rely on your welcome message as a Kickstarter too, a great place to introduce all these slash commands. Other than that, slash commands are going to be really key for your users. So we suggest do not overload every feature and then some that your app offers to have its own slash command. Even though they're easy to use, you can bog down your user's experience by inundating your app with way too many. Focus on key core features, and then think about using cards and dialogues to serve some less prominent functionality. Naming is super important too and something you need to plan out. Short, clear names that represent the interaction are a must. A solid matching description will help too. You will notice your commands can be blended in with other chat apps as well. One common convention is to prefix your commands with your app name. That will make them easily identifiable and grouped together and easier to access and use. As we see here, Asana and other chat apps like Jira and Jenkins have named their slash commands so they're grouped together. While some other apps didn't do this, it makes it a bit harder to navigate. So it's not a requirement, but it really does make for a nice practical user experience. Cards are perhaps the most common interaction pattern for chat apps. They allow you to expand your responses to users with richer formats and added structure to messages. And they're drawn via a number of available widgets, including headers, sections, images, text, key values, and buttons. They also allow you to introduce interactivity to your apps, enabling users to click buttons and images that open URLs or run chat app functions you designed them to call. You can even include parameters in the latter as well. One of the neat things about cards is that they can be posted to a space and users don't need to take immediate action. Unlike a dialogue that requires an immediate response, cards can persist in a thread, allowing interactions to be discovered and invoked well after the fact. Cards are pretty versatile in the way you design them, and you can mix up the way you use them as well. On the screen, you can see the help card from the Asana chat app. They have a clear header that lets you know that this is a help function, followed by a couple of sections. In the first section, they've a few buttons they've added that they've hooked up to just their most popular actions. Then in the second section, they have a list with some formatted text that offers a few other /command features, allowing you to explore more. What I like what they did here is they didn't overwhelm the screen for their user. They only showed the essentials, but they also offer a show more button at the bottom to reveal more. Then if the user asks for it, they can click more and see everything else that the app offers. And since cards are just messages with format and structure, they can be updated from the app, as is the case here. This is nice because they don't flood the space with yet another message, and you can just update the prior one with new content. This is worth mentioning once again, the Google Chat Card Builder tool we covered in the Chat Apps 101 session. The Card Builder is a super helpful tool for designing cards and dialogues, so you can plan out and visualize your designs before putting them to code. You can access it from gw-card-builder.web.app/chat. And with a link like that, it's definitely worth bookmarking. Dialogues are yet another important interaction pattern for chat apps, and they are a next level experience to really guide users through interactions versus cards and definitely text. Dialogues streamline the input flow where users get point-and-click simplicity throughout the process that includes richer patterns like multi-select, autocomplete, and pre-populated values. Allowing users to make choices with prompts and validation has a clear advantage over free-form text to help you avoid input errors and user ambiguity. Dialogues definitely lend themselves to more complex, multi-step processes, and you are able to string a number of dialogues together to handle longer or conditional operations. Unlike cards that persist in the message, dialogues require users to respond to the dialogue while it's prompted. This is super useful for a number of scenarios like authentication or gathering inputs that's required for the user to complete before taking additional actions within a process flow. As mentioned, you can also design dialogues with the Card Builder tool just as you can with cards, but note, they are uniquely valuable as they offer way more flexibility and control over user interactions. That was a quick run through on some key design principles of chat apps. Let's take a look at next steps. Here we have a checklist that you can use to guide you through your process of designing your chat apps. So, first of all, have you identified your audience? Does your design meet their needs? Have you created a storyboard to document all your interactions? Have you covered an effective onboarding strategy? Have you supplied a help command that's clear and to the point? Another best practice we didn't cover, but is a great part of a good design, offer a feedback function for your app. A simple dialogue will suffice, but it's a great way to include users post-deployment to help your app be as good as possible. And finally, a plan to test your design to make sure you haven't overlooked something, or to make sure you're including all the latest features, because as you know, we're still building onto the chat platform as we speak. And finally, for more information, we offer a bevy of resources on chat development. I will leave the slide up for a moment, but note, at the very least, you can start your developer journey at developers.google.com/chat. Thanks so much for listening. Can't wait to see what you end up designing, and can't wait to see your chat apps.